7 seconds on the clock for Tyree. The game on the line to the end zone. Touchdown, Buckeyes! Boone Hyatt, the transfer wide receiver, with the touchdown reception with 3 seconds on the clock, and the game is tied. The extra point can win it all for the Buckeyes.
Whatever your time of day you're watching this, welcome back to the Cole Mantell Show. I'm Cole, and as you can notice, new studio. We are back after 2 weeks. The mic is new as well, so I can't wait to open the audio software and not be able to hear anything. But barring any of that fun, welcome back to the show. Again, I'm Cole. We got 3 guests, 2 returnees, and 1 late new addition. I'll start with the new addition. If you notice, Mike Peters, the commissioner, El Presidente, creator of this great league that inspired the show. How you doing, Mike?
Well, good. When you said new mic, I thought you were talking about me, so I waved. Then I realized you were talking about the mic you're talking into.
Nice. So you are going to have some fun on the show. I know we got Ware here as well, so I can't wait for this interaction, but Ware, welcome back. How are you?
I'm doing good. How you doing, buddy?
Good. We'll see how my voice holds up. Had a sore throat all week. So if I'm drinking a little bit more water than usual, I promise it's not whiskey this time. Unlike
you drink whiskey on the podcast?
Yeah. Once in a while. I got a giant whiskey bottle back in the kitchen that I stole from my parents' place.
It's still weird because it looks like you're 9 years away from being able to drink.
Well, at least I'm not 9 years away from whatever your hairdo is.
Just shaved head. Don't you know bald is beautiful?
Yes, that's what Mr. Clean said too.
Mr. Clean was very famous too. Much more famous than the Cole Mantell Show.
Yeah, that's true. But does
you want to go down this path with me, Cole?
does Mr. Clean throw 3 interceptions in a row to lose and choke a easy winnable game against Virginia Tech? I don't think so.
That's a Cole special.
Oh my God, that was the most Cole Mantell game of all time. We'll get into it in a minute. I got another guest to introduce first. How you doing, Ryan? AD of Texas. Good return of the show.
Doing great. With that note, you're gonna hate my players to watch in the early part of the week. The players that really stood out to me because there's a couple of them I pulled from that game specifically. But doing great. Glad to be here.
No, what was it? Ziggy Zelensky, who had an interception and ran to the house, and then the other guy did too. All the props to Virginia Tech. I was not having a good day, but that's the CFSL for you.
You had a good game with just a couple of untimely picks.
I had a good 3.5 quarters. That I guess really that last half of that fourth quarter was about the most painful moment of CFSL action I've ever watched as a player.
Obviously, you didn't watch Kentucky and Colorado.
Well, yeah, that's fair. That's a good example too, but it's a little different when you're the guy that's playing it. But we'll get right into it. Basically,
You introduced Ware. You skip him.
I did just.
I don't
remember.
Remember him.
I introduced him. Right? I said you and Ware are going to argue.
As you pointed out, I'm old, so I have trouble with memory.
I did not point out that you're old. I pointed out that Ware was a drinker, but that's a different story entirely.
He doesn't even remember insulting my hairline.
I'm offended that you think that I consume any type of alcohol whatsoever.
You don't even drink water. That's all you drink is alcohol.
Actually, because of the tooth being pulled, they said I can't drink any whiskey right now. So I have a bottle of water.
You're probably as healthy as you've been in 20 years.
His liver doesn't know what to do with that. It has no idea how to even process
my
that.
liver is more sanitized than yours, is all I can say.
I promise you it's not.
So we'll jump into our first segment. I have the standings here pulled up. And the first question I have for you guys, when I set the agenda for this show, we have 6 teams who are 2-0. I'm going to read them out to you. North Carolina, Miami, Oregon, Ohio State, Oklahoma, and a certain Alabama team that may be on the show here too. I guess we got UNC on here too. Now, obviously, still non-conference play. We got week 3 of non-conference play. All these teams will not be 2-0 forever, but I guess I'm going to go around the horn here. We'll start with Ryan. Which of these teams do you think is real? Their 2-0 record matters, and which of the 2-0 teams do you think might fall in week 3 and might not be real?
I'll start off. I'll kind of go like conference by conference here. ACC's real. North Carolina and Miami are both real. Those are both real teams. They're both really good, and they're both, going to be in the running for the ACC title. I think Florida State will as well. I think that's going to be the 3-horse race again this season. But I think it's going to be a really close race between the 3 of them. I think they're both real. Ohio State, I think, is real. I think they've proved it by who they've beaten so far this season. We didn't think that this was the team that they were going to be, but they are. It's hard to say not real, but Oregon, they have yet to beat someone that has like taken me away. They've won games that I kind of expected Oregon to win. Not to say that they're not real.
Last year.
Yeah, a lot like Oklahoma last year. Like, not to say that they can't make some noise when they get further on, but until they have that game against a team, when they get into conference play, if they beat a Michigan or a Michigan State, then you're like, oh, okay, Oregon's for real. Oklahoma, 100% for real. They have a good team this year. They're built better. They're back. And Alabama, as much as it pains me to give Ware props, Alabama's for real. They have a really good team. I'm impressed by this team. I think that Alabama could put some real pressure on the top end against Auburn in the SEC, which means that Iron Bowl could be, could end up being the de facto SEC championship game, and I'm really excited if that happens.
It'd be nice to see Alabama actually compete in the Iron Bowl for once.
Look at the all-time record. In fact, Cole, season 19, 54 to what?
I'm not the one who is talking trash. You can't go and turn that on me. I'm no longer the Auburn AD.
I'm just saying, Alabama for the series has owned Auburn. Congratulations, they've won the last 2. They have, but Alabama has owned Auburn in that series, in multiple times eliminating Auburn from even making it to the playoffs because of the Week 8 loss. So there is that.
You'll notice a few seasons ago he was talking about how Auburn will never win. Now that Auburn has won twice in a row, it's now Auburn is just not even though that doesn't really matter for the series, just to point it out.
That's why it's hard to give Ware props for anything, because he's so humble when he do.
Oh, boy. Well, with that, so Mike...
You know what you were getting when you brought me on, Cole.
No, it's good. Why do you think? First off, I didn't bring you on. You DM'd me asking if you could steal Tank's spot. Tank had some audio issues.
Whoa.
What
is this? Is this Bidenomics here? You're misrepresenting the truth here. I asked when you were recording the show, and you said now, and I said I'll hop on, and then Tank's internet crashed, so we removed it. Don't bastardize.
Did you send Tank a message? It had a virus to crash his internet.
Yes, I would believe it. It's Mike.
I do not have that kind of technology. I would have used it on a lot of people already.
That's fair.
Oh boy. But so yeah, Mike, your UNC Tar Heels 2-0. Brian kind of went through it. I think Oregon's the team that people are kind of honing in on. Do you agree with that? Are they the quote unquote fraud? Or you got? I mean,
if you start off 3-0 and then you go 0-5 in conference, it's an improvement over last year. I'm not saying that's going to happen, but Michigan looks better this season. Ohio State, we weren't sure about, didn't rank them going into the season, but they look just as good as they were last year. Michigan State, is another one of those teams that 4-4, 5-3 range. They got to prove they can be, a little bit better. Penn State is the one we're a little curious on, but I guess even if Oregon goes 3-0 and then maybe they beat like a Penn State or Michigan State or something like that, and they go 4-4 on the season, it's a big step up from last season. So it's a rebound, and that's the thing. Like season to season, we saw Michigan go from 6-2, 7-1 every year to 1-7. Now they look like they're playing well again. We'll see where they wind up. One bad season doesn't make a team, but you got to prove you can do it. So, we'll see, but at least they got a lot of building blocks to build off of going forward, regardless of how this season finishes. And as we've seen before with Oregon, they get in the playoffs, anything can happen.
Yeah, looking at Georgia specifically for that one.
Well,
All
that
right.
one 2 years ago at Hangout where they almost knocked off Auburn to get into the Final Four.
That's true too. Yeah, what was it? It was like it wasn't overtime, but it was fourth quarter. They kept battling each other on it. I understand what you're saying. Yep. All right. Where?
I
I'll
think
let you
it's
finish.
interesting. Everyone's, and I agree that if you have to pick a team, Oregon would be that team. But Oregon has the fourth best point differential in the CFSL right now, and the number one in the Big Ten. I think that does need to carry a little bit of weight. Obviously, your strength of schedule has an impact on that some, but I mean, the fact that given the opportunity to perform, and they are, says a lot about them. So I think they definitely break 500 this year. I know we all know the Big Ten is probably the best conference in the CFSL, and I think statistics will back that up. But they're gonna have a tough battle. But I think they break 500 this year, which, as Mike said, would be a huge season for them. And I think we see them in the playoffs.
So I'm just pulling up the stats here as well before we move on. Yeah, so is Oregon the number 4 team in the country because they have the fourth best point differential? Probably not. Like I agree with you guys on that. They have the best point differential, as you said. I'm happy you brought that up. Where in the Big Ten, 2 games so far, they beat West Virginia 34-11 in week 1. And then they played Tennessee. I believe it was a game at home, win by 10, 48-38. They go on the road to Notre Dame this week, which I would assume they're going to be a 2-touchdown favorite likely in that game. No offense to Notre Dame. And so the big question here is, like you guys said, going into conference play, it is going to be a tough conference schedule. I agree with you where the Big Ten definitely looks like so far probably the toughest conference. And actually, before we move on, I want to show out the SEC. So Alabama 2-0, right? You guys have a 62-point differential, plus 62. You are the only team where in the SEC with a positive point differential. Auburn's exactly at 0, and everybody else is negative.
Yeah, but I mean, you got to look at Auburn as, FSU and USC. I mean,
They get Texas.
That's
this
a
week,
brutal
right?
schedule.
Who's Auburn have this week?
They got Texas A&M.
Texas A&M. Oh, good for them. That's yeah.
That's a tough start for A&M. They've starting off 0-2, and then possible to start 0-3 after a championship appearance. Which it could happen. That's the whole point of the schedule is slotting guys against other division champs or wherever you finished, and they could start 0-3 and go 4-1 in conference, win their conference, be second in their conference, make the playoffs. So I know a lot of people get down and especially Cade, getting down starting 0-2, but you got 2 close losses. You might start out 0-3. We'll see how that game goes, but even if you do, you go 4-1 in conference, you're in the playoffs. None of it matters.
Yeah, Texas A&M, for reference, their schedule at USC, 28-23 loss, home against Miami last week, 48-32. They go on the road for Auburn this week, which, like you said, Mike, going to be one heck of a challenge. We'll keep an eye on that as well. But, I think that's actually a good point. I didn't have this in the agenda, but you are jumping on the show, Mike. Maybe for the guys who aren't aware, I know I'm aware, but how do you and Frosty build the schedule each year? How do you build non-conference opponents? I'm kind of curious if you can explain a little more.
Well, this year it was almost exclusively 1 seeds, 2 seeds, 3 seeds all play each other. Before it was a little bit harder because we had protected rivalries like Notre Dame, USC, Virginia Tech, and West Virginia, and other ones that we've had throughout the years. But we did away with them, obviously, because USC and Notre Dame aren't on the same level. Even West Virginia against Tech, just based on record. So we finally, this is really the first season that I can remember where we literally just went straight, 6 seeds against each other, 5 seeds. The only thing that threw it off was Penn State and Florida because they didn't match up. And then A&M we adjusted because they made the national championship. But for the most part, it was you slotted in order against the team, first place, all play each other. And the whole idea is to create parity if you have a down season, you have an easier schedule the next season, so that hopefully you can have success, kind of find your way back. And if you had a really good season, well, now it's going to be tougher. So the one thing to be said about that is teams like Florida State, who are always up there, Michigan up until last season, Auburn the last couple of seasons, USC, when teams can consistently, go 6-2 or 8-0 like Auburn, 7-1 like Florida State every year, even though they have these tough schedules, that is really the key to seeing who the great teams are and the great ADs are, because even with the tough schedule, they can still replicate that success. And that really gives you a chance to separate the outliers who are really good, while also, giving the teams that struggled one season a chance to try to, kind of bounce back, have some success, and rebuild the program.
I like that answer. And yeah, for the viewers, because we had over 75 viewers last week again. I think it's
Nice.
2 or 3 weeks in a row. For the newer viewers in the CFSL of like how the schedules are built, there's your answer. It's interesting too, because we'll take Michigan State just for example. We have obviously Virginia Tech last week, and before that, week 1, we go against another great team in Georgia. But when we build the schedule, right, you go from, let's see, last season we won a bunch of games, beat the number 1 team on the road, but then you lose in the first round of the playoffs. How do you equate that? Just going by seeding, obviously, is pretty easy way to do it. I'm still partial to the days where ADs could pick one team they wanted to play and try to.
No, that was awful.
I know it's bad, but
because some teams would like maybe Ware and Ryan want to play each other, and I'm like, okay, cool. And then you got guys like Benham who picked all the teams that went 0-8, and it's like, come on, man, like that's not what it was designed for. So there are things where sometimes you have to take it out of the hands of the user for the betterment of the league as a whole, and the scheduling is definitely that thing. Now the cool thing is we're seeing some first time matchups, like Kentucky and Colorado had never played before. Somebody else played this week, Brian.
Georgia and Texas.
Yeah, Georgia and Texas had never played before. So the cool thing is with doing this, sometimes you get guys that are playing the same guys kind of all the time, but then also like that, Georgia and Texas. Georgia's been in the league, what'd you say, 8 seasons?
Yeah.
And they had never played Texas. So we're getting some new matchups that way too. And then, looking at West Virginia, Tennessee, Notre Dame, and Oregon all playing each other, like those are all teams that struggled last season. They all get a chance to battle it out, and whoever comes out the best in that way, Oregon comes out 3-0, regardless of what happens in conference play. Like they kind of set themselves above everybody else. So it's kind of cool. It gives everybody kind of an opportunity. The greats got to prove they're great, and then the teams that struggle get a chance to prove that, well, we struggled, but we had a tough schedule, but against these other guys, we're better. So
I think the exciting part about it too is that when you get to the end of the season, I think you're going to have those. When we get to like the vote, you're going to be like, oh, well, team A or team B. And you're going to be like, well, they played already. Like, I feel like a lot of them are going to have played already, and you're going to have a definitive answer. Well, when team A and team B met, team B beat the crap out of them. There's no question they deserve to get in, which is going to be fun, I think.
Well, one thing that could come back to bite them is like Oregon, for instance.
yeah, I was going to say,
Let's say they go 3-0, but then they go 1-4 in conference. So they're 4-4, which definitely got you in last season. But let's say there's 3 4-4 teams or something competing, and that's like, well, your non-conference schedule wasn't very good, so even at 4-4, you're not going to get in. So for Oregon, if you go 3-0 in non-conference, you better win at least 2 conference games.
I was going to say, I'm just looking at random teams here. What happens if both Oregon and LSU are 4-4? LSU 1-1 in non-conference.
I mean, LSU's got a slightly tougher non-conference schedule, so
that's what I'm saying.
I mean, you got to see who they played, but I mean, just based on the schedule right now, you would think that LSU would get the.
I think it is who they beat in conference too. If LSU takes down like Oklahoma or Texas A&M, that'd be huge. Or the other side, if Oregon beats USC, that holds a little bit more weight.
That's true. Yeah, for sure.
So good conversation to have towards the playoffs. LSU, just because I brought them up randomly, they're non-conference. They beat Clemson by 4, 49-45 week 1. lose to Michigan last week, 55-41. They play Ware's Alabama Crimson Tide this week. So big game for them, actually. We'll get to that in a little bit.
Wookiee versus Ware matchup.
Yeah, LSU Alabama.
Before. How many times have you played Wookiee?
As never when he was an AD and I was an AD.
Really?
Yeah, we've never played as ADs. Now, season 8, he was on Clemson. They beat us at Miami during the regular season and knocked us out of the playoffs that year.
Yeah, he was just a player back then. The AD is really where it matters because you put your game planning in.
Yeah, but
first time matchup between y'all. That's cool.
Yeah. So I'm looking forward to it. I'm putting a lot of work in to prepare for this one.
Hey, you guys are looking good. I think now that you got your settings on point and you got your computer back, you got an extra sim, like you're starting to creep into the beard and DT realm of game planning.
I'll be chasing tornadoes with this guy, and he'll be just like, "Yeah, I'm gonna run a sim here." I'll just hear him like turning the PS3 on the background. It's hilarious.
You only live once, Cole.
I almost kind of need a 5 the other day. Frickin' turns right away from me. If it turned left, I would have died. That game is nuts.
What are you talking about?
He doesn't watch the show. Mike does not watch the show.
What?
So,
oh, you guys are talking about that Tornado Chaser game?
Yeah. A few weeks ago, we started playing it, and we're chasing, and there's this like EF5 that crosses the road. We're behind it. I'm trying to get ahead of it, going east. The tornado is going kind of southeast. I go in front of it, and where behind me goes, "You only live once." Turns left, and you live though, right? You didn't die.
I didn't die.
He tried to turn directly into an EF5. I don't know how he lived, but he lived. So we talked about it last time on the show too. Freaking hilarious game.
Ryan looks really interested in this Tornado Chaser talk.
No, I zoned out for that, but I updated when the mention of PS3. Wanted to track my PS3, which should be here today, which got me excited.
Oh yeah,
Ryan
you
is here
redeemed
to
one.
say too.
Mm-hmm.
Was it you and who was it? You and Dobbins?
Dobbins.
Me and Dobbins, yeah.
Yeah, within the first 5 minutes of the first game of the season, that was wild.
Yeah, I ordered 5, and they all went. Like the 2 redemptions went right away. We wound up selling the last one this week, and then I had another guy hit me up. I'm like, man, I could have ordered 10. So
I mean, I would say you have the opportunity to order quite a few more and sell them.
Yeah, it's just hard. We don't have as much time to get them done during the season, but I guess I'll have to order more this off season, get them up and ready to go.
So, speaking of PS3s, the one that I ordered, let's see here. In Ybor City, speaking of Gasparilla, that's the shirt today, by the way.
That's close.
Yeah, it's 10 minutes away. Yeah, we'll see when they deliver it.
Tuesday.
Is it Tuesday?
You're
just messing with me?
Like it's 10 minutes away and you'll get it in 3 days.
Yeah, that's fair. That's honestly, I wouldn't be surprised. It's Gasparilla here in Tampa. It's going to be crazy. All right, so we'll go quickly. I'm not going to have like a full in-depth breakdown of every game that we have gone through, but this week a lot of fun games. I'm just going to go through. We got Auburn and USC, and then later on Monday night, Miami A&M. Obviously, we talked about. Sorry,
Tuesday,
not Monday.
He's going through last week.
Last week.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
Yeah, I was just
Don't mind me.
last week. I did look. I have gotten that wrong before. So Auburn, yeah. So again, Auburn beats USC. Miami over at A&M. Your guys' thoughts on that? I'll start with Ware.
That was a great game, and it looked like USC was going to win it, and then Auburn struck back just in time. I mean, 2 heavyweights fighting it out. I mean, you could not ask for a better game. Duke threw 4 interceptions and still got the win. Jordan Hack with 3 interceptions, the hack trick. So that was a very impressive game from him. But it was a great game.
All righty. Yeah, a nice Monday night. Ryan, quickly your thoughts too.
Yeah, I mean that game was awesome. It was a good comeback effort by USC. They outscored them in the fourth quarter, but a dominant third quarter by Auburn is what's going to put them on top. And that was one that was a lot of fun to watch. And Miami, that was a really good game. It felt back and forth for a while, and then it felt like maybe Miami was about to take control and it was over, and then Texas A&M battled back a little bit at the end, but ultimately the Hurricanes would come out with the win.
It's the only thing, Mike. I'm not going to have you go through the whole thing as well, unless you want to. Miami enters week 2, number 8. You are famously part of said rankings. Do you think Miami's a top 5 team going into week 3?
I don't know. It's so hard. I briefly looked at it yesterday, but we didn't want to get into it. We got a lot of stuff going on Fridays now. It takes us longer to get everything done, but so we'll probably do it Tuesday. We're actually wind up getting a holiday on Monday because we're not doing games because of championship game, and Frosty can't put settings in, so Monday's kind of like a holiday for us. So I guess we won't do it until Tuesday, unless we get on the phone and do it Monday. But it's hard because USC comes in at number 1, but they lose to Auburn, who was 3 going into that. So it's like, how far do you drop them? Auburn does have the loss in week 1. So does UNC or Alabama or Miami jump them because they're 2-0? Even though Auburn won, but you don't want to put Auburn at 1-1 into number 1. So I don't know. It's going to be crazy. I don't know. It's hard to say, but having some kind of amalgamation of North Carolina, Miami, Alabama, USC, and Auburn is in the top 5 is probably likely. But I don't know until we really get in and talk about it and figure it out.
Yeah, I'm looking at it now. I would assume because Florida State beat Auburn, they would be number 1, and Auburn would be number 2. But
who did you have number 1?
Florida State.
Why would Florida State be number 1?
Excuse me. No, they lost. They beat Auburn.
Yeah, but they lost to Ohio State, who was 9.
Well, I use that as a segue for Tuesday.
I mean, that's the hard thing. It's like, you could make an argument for UNC, Alabama, or Miami, but then you got Auburn and USC are both 1-1, but they've both lost the top 5 teams and beaten top 5 teams. So it's like, I don't know.
You're not going to make everyone happy with the rankings, and I'm glad it's you and not me.
I mean, if you get your butt hurt over early season rankings, then you need to go find a hobby.
The other part of it is now that it's automatic who gets in, mostly, except for the vote-ins, which you can make the argument if you have to.
Well, it has nothing to do with the rankings. The rankings are all for show.
Yeah.
I mean, at the end of the season, the rankings probably go into the vote-in a little bit, but I mean, whether you're unranked or you're ranked number 1, it has no effect on the game that's played. Just go out and win your games, and the rankings just kind of give you an idea of where you are relative to everybody else. But if you're 2 or you're 8, it doesn't matter. Go win, and you'll move up the rankings. It's real simple.
Sounds good. So real quick, actually, before I move on, UNC Penn State 47-25, and as you mentioned, right, Ohio State did beat Florida State 31-30 in a great game on Tuesday.
That game was nuts.
Your thoughts, Mike?
That last second touchdown, Florida State scores to go up, and then I don't think they had like a minute left, and Ohio State drives down, and on the last play of the game, might have been a 4th down even, but either way, it was the last play of the game. 5 seconds left, they score to get in and win by 1. That was insane.
I almost forgot about it, and that's kind of you saw me. It was like, wait a minute, Ohio State. Well, right, they won. The crazy part, and I'll get to you in a sec. Where the crazy part about that I think it was like last 30 seconds, is that you often will see teams throw Hail Marys or go deep when they're in that situation, down 1 score, less than a minute left in regulation. But Ohio State, they throw, I think it was 2 sideline passes deep, and then that really. I don't think Florida State's defense in the Tuesday games.
I was going to say it was a little over 30 seconds when Ohio State got the ball, and their very first play was a check down to Emily Davis, and I think it was only like 5 or 6 yards. I'm like, that's really kind of a questionable call. And they hurry up, got to the line, then did the 2 out of bounds plays. But that was Boone Hyatt with the touchdown, and I tell you what, that was probably one of the wildest finishes and that we've seen this season. That's hard because we've had so many great games that have come down to the wire, and I think that's got to be a top 3 wild best finish of the season so far.
We had 2 1-point games this week.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Virginia Tech and Ohio State. That's crazy.
So, Ryan, your thoughts as well. And I'll add this stat just because I wanted to bring up Boone Hyatt probably as well. Boone Hyatt plays for Alabama, plays for Ware for 2 seasons, has combined in those 2 seasons 200 receiving yards. Goes to Ohio State. He's got 54 receiving yards on 6 receptions so far. And his first 2 career touchdowns came last week when they beat Colorado, then this week when they beat Florida State. So I'll let you share your thoughts, Ryan. I'll just add that to the chat here.
Yeah, one thing that jumped out, and besides the ending, which those 2 guys talked about, was red zone defense in this. Florida State made 7 trips to the red zone. They had 3 red zone touchdowns, less than 50%. Ohio State made 4 trips. They scored 2, exactly 50%. The red zone defense that both teams played was brilliant in this game, forcing them to settle for 3, and a lot of times, or a couple of times, I should say, settling for no points at all when it comes to turnovers or knocking them back out of field goal range. That was a big storyline in this, especially 31-30 in terms of the CFSL. Not a high-scoring game overall. I mean, that's both defenses showed out when they had to at the end there, and they made a big impact in the way this was going to end.
Yeah, it was one of the more entertaining games of the season. I think one of the better regular season games we've had in a while. We'll see, because we're going to talk about a few games here I kind of want to get into, but in terms of the pure highlights, I think this game had the most highlights come out of it. I will agree with you guys on that too. And Boone Hyatt will forever be a legend for his team too. So congratulations to him. We'll go over Wednesday real quick. Virginia Tech beats Michigan State 29-28. Oklahoma beats Florida 48-10. Michigan beats LSU 55-41. And then Alabama beats Clemson 65-9. I'll go first on this one because I was playing, and I think most of the audience, maybe the Virginia Tech fans, are waiting for my reaction. I said it in the chat during that game. Easily my worst game as a CFSL quarterback. Doing all right.
Well, I don't buy that at all.
You don't think so?
No, it was a great game. Just
it was a good game,
and it turned around on you. You've had much worse games.
Through 2 late picks, I think. Yeah.
What Mike's saying is you forget how bad you've been at other times.
That's a good point. I'm thinking back to Texas A&M now. We wanted to change it up.
Nice one, Brian. Well played. But what a way to compliment him and throw it back at the same time.
All right, so I'm banning all 3 of you fuckers. So we're going to change the script up, guys. Michigan State will win in week 1. Now week 2 we'll have the game where it falls apart. I've been working with Drake and James and the rest of the coaching staff. We'll figure it out. It was a very good game. I think Virginia Tech played their hand very well, played a lot more conservative than I think we anticipated them to, and then the weather helped them a little bit, and then me deciding to throw 2 screen pick sixes in 2 minutes helped them. But great game overall. We get Oklahoma next week, which Oklahoma crushed Florida in a game that was also, Florida is not a slouch by any means. I think Oklahoma really trying to make a case for being the class of the Big 12, though I think someone in this call might disagree. Michigan, again, LSU, we talked about that. And then Alabama, where I'll let you talk next, because Clemson, obviously, they're still building up a little bit, but what a performance from your team there.
It's I think Clemson's got a bright future first and foremost. I think Logan Wetzel is really building that program up to be something special. I think each season his recruiting class is going to be a little bit better, and I think Clemson is going to be back towards the top of the league. I think again like they were back in season 8, season 9. I think they have that potential. So hats off to Logan and that team, their effort for continuing to fight. As far as Alabama goes, it was fun to see. Last year and the last several seasons, we've had some games that on paper we should have controlled from the start to finish, and we didn't. We let a lot of teams hang in. We had a lot of close games that that maybe we should not have had. And so to have it is the most dominant win that we've had since season 19, week 8. It's the first time that we have been able to really perform at 100%, I think. And that's on me for not putting my guys in position over the last couple seasons to perform to the fullest. But it was nice to see a complete performance from start to finish, offense, defense, special teams. Everybody played a part. Everyone had a tackle. Everyone had a reception. Everyone did something big in the game. So it was great to see on that aspect.
Good to hear. And Ryan, I'll let you get your thoughts in too.
First off, I'm just going to shout out Nate Skinner, who had those 2 picks late in that game for Virginia Tech. Like I said on the broadcast, forever that's going to be known as the Nate Skinner comeback for me because of what he was able to do. It felt like the game was in hand there until he came up with 2 big plays on 2, really the exact same play. They went to that screen, exact same screen, threw it to Hawk both times, and Skinner jumped it both times. Took one to the house, took one I think to the 2-yard line if memory holds.
It didn't go in the books as a pick 6, but it was basically, I think they ran it in the next play.
We'll call it a pick 3.5. It was it was a great play though. That was a phenomenal game. The Florida game surprised me. I thought the Gators would make it a really competitive game if that Oklahoma came out and played a great ball game. They have a fantastic team. Michigan with a huge win. And that one kind of felt like it took last year, and we've talked about it a lot. They lost to exclusively to good teams and exclusively by 1 score the whole season. I mean, they were at the end of the season, they were 18 points away from being a top 4 seed probably. That's how rough it was. This one felt like kind of a redemption kind of moment for Michigan, get back on the right track, and build some momentum going forward. And then Alabama looked amazing in their game. There's no other way to put it. They looked really fantastic in that one.
It does say something though. Winning those close games, that is a skill, and I would argue that's one of maybe not this season, but the last 2 seasons so far. Auburn, I think one of their biggest things that they've shown is winning those close games. Obviously, playoffs are a different story, but that is a skill.
Agree with that assessment.
When you get to the playoffs, you're going to play in almost exclusively close games. Everybody's good at that point. Mm-hmm. So you have to know how to win good games or just close games.
I don't know if you can control that as much actually. I think it's mostly trying like in the playoffs. We talked about this before. If you're going up against a team, you want to try to get yourself. I mean, it's basically a 50-50 game if you guys are similar overall, right? And so what you're trying to do with your settings is if you can get yourself an edge where you can get a 55 or 60% chance to win, you want to try to do that. But what you really want to do is make sure you don't fall below 50%. And when those games are back and forth and they're 50-50, well, you got to think about it. If you run 20 sims and you win 10 of them, and a lot of them are close, it's just who makes a play late in the game. I don't know if you can really control those late games to some degree. I mean, obviously Ryan and David would know better than me, but to some degree you can maybe, if you've seen sims and you can adjust your play calling late, things like that. But so much of those close games are just what player makes a play or what player makes a mistake. And they're really all you're trying to do is just put yourself in a position where it's close and hope that your guys make plays when it matters. I think the things like Ware is talking about is being able to beat the teams you should beat consistently and being able to dominate the teams you should be able. Those things I think are more in control. But against good teams, man, I know everybody likes to think that close games, it was all part of their game planning. Close games were a lot of luck. It just who made plays at the right time. You did a great job by keeping yourself in that position to be there. But one play, as you saw, Michigan State, Tech, one play, you throw an interception can change it. Then you look at Colorado, Kentucky, which we're going to talk about. There was nobody's game plan played into that last 4 minutes. That was just they were both lined up and chaos.
I think God left the server when that last fourth quarter started. We'll get to that in a sec. The only thing I'll say is I do think there is something to be said though, and maybe Ryan and Ware can answer this when we talk about Thursday as well. About running, say for example, a more conservative running game. If you have a really good running back like Oregon, does, or Colorado. I think there is some things you can tweak, but you're right, Mike. There is a lot of luck as well, no doubt.
And I
I
don't
guess
want to like people look at luck and they're like, oh, it's BS that we lost. Like, no, it's not. What you're not recognizing is you're trying to put yourself in a position to win the game and give yourself the best percentage chance of win. But you get in a 50-50 battle. One game, somebody in your play makes a team and you win. The other game, somebody on their team makes a play and win. So it's luck in that who made the play, but it's not like luck in that, oh, well, we flipped the coin. No, it's just, are you going to is your team going to make a play late, or is their team going to make a play late? That's all you can really, that's what happens in it is, what team's going to make the play late. And sometimes one team shows up and makes play late, the other time another one.
as the light of God calls upon Mike's take. And
Yeah, I guess I'm moving my hands around.
Hey, I recorded for the first
God is
22
back in the server, apparently.
Yeah. With the window, I get the problem. All right, so we'll quickly go over Thursday as well. I think there's one game on Thursday we all want to talk about. Oregon versus Tennessee. This
Hold
was
on.
actually
I didn't get to talk about these games as much. I know. I wanted to talk. Well, Alabama, because like Ware said, we've been looking for Alabama to dominate some games that they should dominate, and they don't. And they really got to dial in. That's one of the most complete performances we've seen from Alabama in a long time. And that's one of those things where Alabama's consistently a top 8 team every year, but they don't have performances like that really instill confidence like, oh, this team could win. And that game, I think, was one of them. Obviously, they got to keep it going all season. The other one was Oklahoma and Florida. Like, that game, everybody thought was going to be a lot closer, and Oklahoma came out and completely dominated that game. Now, that changed the view of a lot of things, because Florida beating Penn State, like, okay, Florida's good. We know that. He finally got the best of his brother, but then UNC beats Penn State pretty handily. I mean, I think it was 17 points. And then, or maybe it was more than that. And then Oklahoma completely dominates Florida. And it's like, oh, well, what do we have here? Are Florida and Penn State not as good as we thought they were? That raised so many questions. And, oh, by the way, Oklahoma might even be better than we thought they were. So that game was huge in the landscape of how you look at the league as a whole. Penn State and Florida have some questions to answer, and everybody's looking at Oklahoma now like, oh, that's a tough team. I don't want to play them. Especially knocking off, Florida. Like those two games were big, and I just want to throw. And Michigan beating LSU. Michigan, Wookie's first season back, rebuilding his team. It's hard to come in and set the world on fire in your first season. We've seen that. Ryan's noticed that. Beard's seen it's very rare that a guy comes in and sets the world on fire in his first season. That's just not going to happen. But still, Wookie, great game plan. But Michigan, after going 1-7, people writing off Michigan last season, and I think Ryan said it before, they were like 18 points away from being the conference champion. Like, they had a lot of one-score losses, and they came out and they won that game by 14. Like, Michigan is back, and Michigan really wasn't bad last year. They just had a lot of close losses. Michigan's a team that a lot of people wrote off, and I could see Michigan going 5-3, 6-2, finishing second, maybe second in that conference, maybe winning that conference. And so that changed the landscape. That a lot changed on those Wednesday games, and how we look at how the landscape of the CFSL looks this season.
I know I have like a habit of looking forward, but with what we've seen with Michigan and what we've seen with Ohio State, it's been in the back of my mind, like that Week 8 matchup is going to be one to tune in for.
It's going to finally, because like the last few years, Week 8, Michigan, Ohio State was usually, it was either Michigan or Ohio State would be really, really good.
Almost the whole history of that, you go all the way back to season 2. Like almost the whole history of Michigan, Ohio State is it's one team that's really good, the other team's struggling, and the team that's struggling wins that game more often than not. Mm-hmm. This season, it could shape up where Ohio State and Michigan are playing for the conference championship in Week 8.
I would be surprised. I mean, I don't want to jinx anything. I would be surprised if both teams are not top 10 teams Week 8. Like, I think there's a very good chance that both teams are top 10 in the poll going into Week 8.
What do you
I
mean
can
not
definitely see that.
And you got to look, even week 1, Michigan just about beat us. I mean, I could tell you how good they are. I've played them, and it was. I mean, they're good. They're going to cause some havoc in the Big Ten.
And they'll get Clemson on the road this week, by the way, as well. I mean, that's
Rough
another
game for
very
Clemson
well,
coming off that Alabama loss.
very. I mean, very. I would assume Michigan's going to be favored pretty heavily. I think it's a very important game for Clemson too. We'll get into it in a minute here, but another game to watch. All right, cool. We're all good on Wednesday then, everybody. So real quickly, we'll go over Thursday. Oregon beats Tennessee 48-38. Texas goes into Athens, beats Georgia 59-31. Colorado and UK decide that God has left the server, and Colorado wins 54-51. And then West Virginia. I mean, I know it's Notre Dame, but Notre Dame has some talent on that roster. West Virginia 73-31. I'm gonna check that, but I'm pretty sure that is the record for team history for West Virginia scoring points in a game. So it's 73. I don't think I've seen them ever score more than that. Some great games are on the board.
I know
Yeah, Mike,
Frosty had 9 touchdowns in a game before, so it's up there. It's close. But yeah, Frost, Gunnar Rice had another one of those games.
yeah, go ahead, Mike. Yeah, I was gonna say you go first.
So that was so interesting because Notre Dame and Tennessee played a close game the week before, and then West Virginia just comes out and demolishes Notre Dame. Now, Notre Dame started fighting back in the middle of that game, but then West Virginia took control again and put it away. But if you remember back a couple of seasons ago when West Virginia went 6-2, that's when Gunnar Rice had that 9-touchdown game. And now he had an 8-touchdown game in this one. They blew the doors off of Notre Dame. Coming off a game where their offense looked completely inept. They didn't score an offensive touchdown against Oregon. They had a pick 6 and a field goal is all they had in that game against Oregon. And then they come out and they set the world on fire. So now it's like, okay, did, week 1 struggles trying to figure it out? They figure it out in week 2. Do they keep that going? And does West Virginia become a team that you're a little scared of? Now, obviously, it's Notre Dame. They've got a lot of super active guys in that locker room, but they're kind of building. They got to grow, and Notre Dame's got a good base to grow. Not quite there yet, but I mean, I got Ryan, Oklahoma, Texas A&M. They all got to be a little worried about West Virginia. Not that it's a team that can't win, but if that West Virginia team shows up in conference play, that's going to be a lot of really tough games. So that was eye-opening, and that was big. The other one was Tennessee and Oregon. That was a really good game, and Oregon kind of pulled away late in the fourth quarter, wound up winning that game by 10. But Oregon able to win that close game, pull it away. Tennessee showing they got fight. They beat Notre Dame in week 1, and then they compete really well with Oregon. Obviously, it's 2 teams that struggled last season, but Tennessee's, I think, 1 season ahead of Notre Dame. We kind of saw this from Tennessee last season. They got the win last season, ended the losing streak. They came close to beating Kentucky in week 8. Now they come out and win in week 1. They played a really good game against Oregon last week. Now what do they do against West Virginia this week? That's going to be a really interesting game to watch. That changed things. Tennessee is on the up. They're showing they can be competitive. They could create some havoc with some teams. So those were very interesting. Obviously, Texas taking down Georgia. Georgia was real competitive in week 1. Texas rebounded well from their North Carolina game. So they look good. I've been telling people were like, I don't know about Texas. They struggled. Well, yeah, but they struggled in North Carolina last year in week 1, and then they came back and they were right in the Texas is going to figure it out, and they did. And so now Texas is back, as much as I hate that. So they're going to be in that conversation. And then, I mean, Colorado and Kentucky. I know if you didn't watch that game, you look at these 1-point games, but to me, or Colorado and Kentucky was one of the greatest games we've ever had in the CFSL. That last 4 minutes of that game was absolutely insane, and it should win game of the week without question. And even if it doesn't, it's still going to go down as one of the greatest games in CFSL history. That game was insane. You got to keep in mind, okay, I was watching that game. They throw a pick on Colorado throws a pick on the first 2 series. One of them's returned for a touchdown, if I remember correctly. They get 14 out of that. The third drive, They fumble the ball. Colorado fumbles the ball. So they've got 3 turnovers in the first 3 games. And I'm like, okay, this is a game Colorado's going to lose. Not, I mean, people say bad sim. It's one of those games, and I don't like that term because you look at Notre Dame against Northern Illinois, and now they're in the championship game. If you look at that, Notre Dame had a bad sim against Northern Illinois in real life, right? Ohio State had a bad sim against Michigan. If you want to look, no, they just played poorly. But that was a game looking at first 3 drives, I'm like, Colorado's not going to win this game. And yet they did. They came back from being down big, 3 turnovers on their first 3 drives, and then they wind up in that game back and forth. That was insane. It was one of the most insane games we've ever seen. And credit to that Colorado team. Like, they kept fighting. They fought their way back into it, and then they wind up winning at the end. I mean, that game was phenomenal.
Yeah, we're going to get into it. I think everyone wants their piece talking about that game. I will say, I don't think, if we're talking about real-life comparisons here, I don't think Ohio State had a bad sim against Michigan. I think Ohio State intentionally jacked up their settings against Michigan to try to show out, and it blew up on them, if we're going to use that comparison.
But my point is people like to look at games like that and say, oh, it was a bad sim. Well, it was just a game that your team didn't play well, or maybe you tried something that didn't work out for you, like you pointed out. But it's not. I mean, it's just that stuff happens in real life. It happens in the game. And I think, as crazy it is, that this game does such a good job of replicating that variability that you see in real life. And you see it in here. Like, I mean, Appalachian State against Michigan many years ago. Vanderbilt against Alabama this year. Like, those things happen in real life, and they happen in the CFSL. And it's crazy how well this game simulates the unpredictability of real life.
I agree on that, too. We saw that in multiple games this week. Just, Big 12 teams. I'll get to it in a minute. But, I mean, even Texas obviously wins big, but last 1 week you getting your team waxed by North Carolina. The next week you're back and you're just able to really control. And I understand UNC is a little better than Georgia right now, but
they also started down 14-0 that game, and Georgia looked like they were on fire.
Yeah,
like I remember Semi-Rage saying in the game, well, this is going to be a bad game. And I'm like, it's the first quarter. And then they throw a pick 6, a 95-yard pick 6, and that game completely turned. And Texas dominated from that point forward.
Yep. No, it's the momentum is just so key in this league. We talked about it with the Michigan State, Virginia Tech game too. So, Ryan, I'll let you talk about your team now. 4 great games. Your thoughts?
Shout out to Tyrell Lawson, who got that pick 6, because that was it had me a little nervous. 14-0. You still, I know I had faith in my game plan. I liked where our team was, so I wasn't, no one had to take my shoelaces. I was doing okay, but I was nervous for sure. And then as soon as that happened, you just had that feeling like that's the one that busted open, and it did. Luckily for us. Shout out to Georgia, though. Keep fighting with us to the end. But
keep in mind, too, that pick was at the 5-yard line. Yeah. Georgia was looking at going up 21-0 in that game.
Yeah. And
that was crazy.
Yeah, and a huge momentum shift from there. And it was pretty quickly after that we had control of the game. But going to what Mike said about Kentucky and Colorado, I think he's 100% right. I think if you watch this game, and there were a lot of great games this week, but if you watch this game, there was no question in your mind what should win game of the week. This was absolutely fantastic. Here's one stat for you I'll throw in. Colorado scored 54. They scored exactly 50% of their points in the last 6 minutes of this game.
That's great.
That's insane. It was awesome. The fourth quarter was amazing. It was back and forth. After a while, you just had this gut feeling that it was just going to keep going. As soon as Kentucky got the ball back, you're like, okay, here's another shot at the end zone that they're going to end up pulling off. But then a great interception. I believe Ra Banks was the safety that got the interception and able to cap it off. It was a spectacular game, though. One of the best games I've ever called. It might be the best. It was phenomenal. A really, really good game.
Yeah, the only other thing I'll say before we move on to Ware here. Georgia, by the way, I believe was up 21-7 on us in week 1 too. That's the second week in a row that Georgia, I think, was up early and then obviously finished up with a loss. But that might be something Georgia's going to look into going into their Week 3 game. Just wanted to add that in. Ware, thanks for being patient. I'll let you finish us off here.
I mean, definitely, some good games, and I didn't get to watch all of the Kentucky and Colorado game, unfortunately. And then the West Virginia game, I mean, that was huge. I mean, seeing, we talk about Murph, and I've said it several times. Murph is one of the best game planners in the CFSL. He just hasn't had as much talent as a lot of the other teams have had. If Murph ever gets a loaded roster, I think that's scary. And he showed that what he's able to do with his roster, and he showed out. So, I'm glad I don't play in the Big 12 because it's always West Virginia is always a team that could unload on you at any point in time. So, and then seeing Colorado, Kentucky, and Kentucky fighting as hard as they did. I mean, I thought hats off to Kentucky, Eugene. It's 0-2 if you look at the standings, but I mean, he took Miami to the brink week 1, taking Colorado to the brink this week. I mean, he's a new AD, just learning what to do. He has taken some really good teams to the limit, and I know personally I'm going to have to game plan for him, and I'm not going to look past him one bit, knowing that just because he's a new AD, seeing what he's already done is impressive.
Yeah, very good.
Dangerous team.
Yeah, I talked to him. I think it was before the season started. He was on our show too. Very interesting team. I think Kentucky's going to have a lot more to talk about, and we're going to talk about him here as we do that segue into. It won't be the final. Usually, it's our final segment. It won't be the final segment today. We have Kentucky's one of the teams we're going to choose. So, Mike said it at the top of the show. Only 3 days with games this week. No games on Monday. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Each have 4 games. So, Mike, you're new to the show. What we do at the end of each show, we give all 3 of our guests. I'll have them pick them who's going to win. Then I'll add my thoughts as well, and we'll see what the group as a whole thinks is likely to happen. If it's a 4-0, maybe a team's likely going to win, or in the case of Texas A&M multiple times last season, we'll pick 4-0 against them, and then they will win. And we'll have some fun with it. So you don't have to give a reason for your pick. Where I'll let you go first on this one. Tuesday night, we got USC at Miami, Oregon at Notre Dame on YouTube. Then at 8:30, Texas A&M at Auburn, Michigan at Clemson. Your 4 picks. Go ahead.
Oregon. I'll say Miami upsets USC. Auburn over Texas A&M, and then Michigan over Clemson.
So that's 3. You got. Oh, you choosing Oregon over Notre Dame? Is that what you said?
Yes.
Okay. And that's just your thoughts. You don't have any thoughts on that. You just want to.
I mean, well, I think USC is going to be favored, but I really have a feeling that as good. I think it's going to be a down to the wire game. We've seen Miami in a couple of them this year. I think Miami just does a big play. I think Lisa Pink will come up with a huge play towards the end, and hopefully Jordan Hack doesn't have another 3 interceptions for Miami. But I do think that Miami pulls it off in what would be one of the biggest upsets early on.
Well, yeah, USC already has lost once, but this is going to be a crucial game for both teams. Again, Miami, Oregon, Auburn, Michigan are your 4?
Yes.
So I think, it's a little bit weird with how the schedule works out, but I think both games at the 6:30 slot are going to show us a lot about all these 4 teams. I'll let Mike go next. You get to pick 4 teams. Go ahead.
Go with Ryan. I'm not going to make picks, but I'll comment on them. Can't make picks as the commissioner.
Yeah, commissioner. Yeah, I guess that's true. Ryan, go ahead.
I'm going to take USC. I'll take the Trojans, although I do think that's going to be a really good, really close game. That one, of the night, I think that's the toughest game to pick. I'm also going to ride with Oregon. I'm also going to ride with Auburn, and I'm going to follow with Michigan as well.
All right. So, yeah, you're not going to make any picks then, Mike? I'll let you comment.
Well, I won't make picks, but I mean, Oregon against Notre Dame. Oregon's obviously looked good. They're coming in at 2-0. Notre Dame's 0-2. Notre Dame had a close game with Tennessee the first game, coming off a big loss against West Virginia. Notre Dame, it's a game they can win, but it's going to take a really good game plan. I would expect. I think you mentioned this earlier. Oregon's probably going to be favored by 2 scores in that game, so it's going to be a tough game for Notre Dame. But it's one of their opportunities to kind of reverse things. And starting out 0-3, coming off of last season, it's like, oh, how do you feel? So it's a big spot for them. USC Miami, I don't know. That's another one of those games where it can kind of shape the season. If USC loses, they start 1-2, coming off back-to-back championships. And again, it doesn't really mean that much if they wind up going 4-1 in conference. But starting 1-2, coming off of 2 back-to-back championships would be, is there a concern with USC? I don't know. I don't know who's going to be favored in that game, honestly. I think it's going to be a great game, and that's why it's kicking off the slate. A&M and Auburn's big because Auburn could start 0-3, or both them and Auburn. I mean, A&M could start 0-3, or A&M and Auburn could both start 1-2 if Auburn's able to win that game, which would be crazy for all of those things. You could have USC, Auburn, and Texas A&M all 1-2 after week 3. 2 of those teams made it to the conference finals or to the national championship, and the other one had back-to-back 8-0 seasons. They could all start off 1-2. That's crazy. So I think that's going to really be interesting. Michigan and Clemson, Clemson's got an opportunity to rebound here. They have to. If they take another big loss, that really is going to be hard to keep your locker room motivated and keep everybody, focused on the season. Now, again, you go 0-3 in non-conference. You go 3-2 in conference. You can still make the playoffs. So, excuse me. We'll see how it plays out. But that's a big game for Clemson, to be able to compete and say, okay, we still got life here. That game against Alabama was kind of an aberration. We didn't play well. Come out play well against Michigan, and then you got some hope going forward. But that's going to be big, and it's going to be big for Michigan. Michigan comes out and dominates that game. And they start 2-1 going into the conference play. Everybody's really looking at Michigan. They're like, all right, even more like we said, Michigan, Ohio State. That looks big, especially if USC starts off 1-2. I mean, they're landscape changing games this week.
So yeah, that's just Tuesday, which means if Mike's not going to make a pick, that means I got to break some ties here. There's only 1 tie so far on Tuesday. But well said, Mike. So we have USC Miami. I'm looking at it. Part of me wants to go USC. I chose against USC in week 1. They kind of proved me wrong. I think there's a lot of talent on that team. I think Miami's a very good team as well. I think this is going to be a very close game. I would not be surprised if this goes into overtime, and well deserving of the Monday nights. Well, I guess it's Tuesday night technically. If in a normal week it would be a Monday night game, but I think I'll go with USC on this one. I like what they are building or have built, to be a little bit more honest. And I mean, Mike said it pretty good. I think this is going to be a very close game. Oregon, Notre Dame, I think it's going to be a little bit less close. I think Notre Dame will keep it closer than they did. I think actually 10 points is probably about where I think this will end up. I think Oregon does win this, which will give Oregon our first clean sweep among the pick'em for this week. Auburn, Texas A&M. There's a part of me that really wants to take this Texas A&M team. I think they are underachieving to a degree, but I think Auburn as well. They went 8-0 2 seasons in a row. You said it, Mike, but I think each season is a new season. Auburn still kind of figuring out what this team is all about. I would not be surprised if Texas A&M wins this game, but I will choose the Auburn Tigers. No surprise. Michigan at Clemson. I will choose Michigan as well. I think Clemson will keep it closer. I don't think they are the team necessarily that lost 65-9 to Alabama, but I don't know if this is the best team for them to go up against, especially after Michigan comes off a loss. They beat LSU. After they won against LSU, I think Clemson's going to have some trouble there, but we will see. So USC 2-1, Oregon, Auburn, and Michigan all 3-0. That's pretty quick there. Mike, if you're not going to pick that, I'm going to have you go first here for Wednesday. Penn State at Texas, Ohio State at Kentucky, which I do not know how that game went onto YouTube, Ohio State and Kentucky, Georgia, UNC, and then Florida at Virginia Tech. Your thoughts, Mike?
Ohio State, Kentucky, I think mostly because we're not sure about Kentucky with the new AD. And Texas, Penn State, I mean, it's a questionable game, but it's two experienced ADs. Ryan also is calling that game, so I don't want to put his game on YouTube. Like, he's one of the few guys that does well at calling their own games, and I don't like putting a broadcaster's game on YouTube where they're kind of distracted, don't get to see it. So he's called a lot of his own games. He can do that. So I mean that played a role in it. Penn State, it's a big game for Penn State. Starting out 0-2, coming off a big loss against North Carolina. Can they rebound like Texas did and come out and compete with Texas, maybe pull off the upset? I think Richard Williams, we saw in the newcomer game, I think everybody wants to see him carry it 40 times a game. They haven't done that yet. Are they going to do that against Texas? I don't know. But, big game for Penn State there. Big game for Texas, come out 2-1 after the loss to North Carolina. Is interesting. Ohio State and Kentucky, I think Ohio State's going to be favored in that game. Ohio State looks really good, but Kentucky been competitive. I mean, they look like they were going to roll over Colorado, and Colorado fought back, but Kentucky's very tough, and it's not an easy game for Ohio State. So I think Kentucky is definitely capable of an upset there. Georgia, UNC, coming off of last week, you got to think UNC is going to be a decided favorite there. But we saw Georgia knock off 8-0 Ohio State in the playoffs last season. So that is not a game that North Carolina can take lightly. And then Florida Vaught at Tech's a big game because Vaught Tech's a team that went 2-6 a year ago, looking to build on it this year, wants to be in that big three with Florida State and Miami and North Carolina. They beat Florida. They put themselves in that conversation. Possibly. On the flip side, Florida's coming off a really bad loss, and Adam, the AD at Florida, not happy about that, and he wants to come back and prove that the Tigers are a top 10, top 12 team, and definitely one of the threats in the SEC. So I think that could very well wind up being one of the best games of the week.
I look at that game too, and we'll get into my picks in a minute, but I agree with you. That could be game of the week material there. Ryan, I'll let you go first. You got your own team up first. Who you got?
I'm taking Texas in that one. I do think
big shocker there.
I do think it'll be a good game, but I do think Texas is going to win. I'm going with Ohio State, and I know Ohio State's been playing really well right now, but there's something in my gut that tells me to lean towards Kentucky. But I'm going to go with my brain over my gut right here. I'm going to stick with Ohio State. I do think North Carolina's going to win, although I expect Georgia to put up a fight in that one. And man, Florida, disappointing week last week. I still think they have a really good team. Virginia Tech on their way up. This one's a really tough one to call. But I'm going to go with the momentum right now, and I'll say Virginia Tech will end up winning this one.
All righty. Texas, Ohio State, UNC, VT are your choices. Where? You go ahead.
Texas over Penn State. I think it's going to be a close one. I think Kentucky gets a big play at the end of the game that separates them and gives them the win against Ohio State, much like Ohio State had against Florida State. I see it being a similar late game play. So give me Kentucky. North Carolina, I think will win. And then I think Florida. I predicted Florida was going to destroy Oklahoma, not just win, but I thought Florida would destroy Oklahoma. I think they had a rough game, but I'm going to say Florida is a lot better than what we saw last week, and I think Florida comes out and wins and wins dominant.
All righty. Well, that leaves me Texas and UNC of 2 picks, and then I got to break 2 ties here. This should be fun. There's a good part of me that wants Penn State on 6:30 on that 6:30 game. I think Penn State, obviously, they aren't seen. I think with Texas' schedule, I don't know. If you give Penn State's Texas's non-conference schedule, I think Well, I guess they kind of have similar ones anyway. That's actually part of the parity of this league too. That's a tough one. I think I'm going to take Penn State here. I think Penn State is going to make those adjustments, maybe go to the running game a little bit better. I know I hate picking against a guest on the show, but well, it's if it was Ware, I would happily pick against Alabama, but Texas is a little different.
It's all right. Being right's not fun if somebody's not wrong.
Sorry, not sorry. Actually, no, I don't feel too bad. I'm going to pick Kentucky against Ohio State. I think Ware kind of hit the nail on the head. Mike's bald head, that is. As Kentucky, I had to go there.
Listen here, young man.
Yeah, fair. Kentucky has been so close, and I think the talent on that roster really has shown that they can play with the best in this league. I think Ohio State, it's tough to go 8-0. I don't know if Ohio State goes 8-0. Even if Ohio State wins here, I think they are a very good team. I think Ohio State potentially could be the number one team when this is all said and done. But I think they lose at least one game this season. I don't think they pull an Auburn and go 8-0. And I'm going to pick Kentucky in this game. UNC and Georgia, I really like what I've seen from Georgia, and that includes our game for Michigan State against Georgia. However, I am going to give UNC another point here, and I will choose Mike's Tar Heels here, just because I think UNC at home is going to be a little bit more likely to pull out a win, especially after we talked about this too. Georgia's few, I wouldn't call them collapses, but they've led in both their first 2 weeks and haven't been able to pull it out. I think North Carolina is the kind of team you can't really do that against. And I think Georgia does lead at some point in this game again, and I think UNC wins. Florida, Virginia Tech as well. I mean, I'm going to give credit here to VT. Normally, I think I would choose Florida in this game, but what a game plan from them. And I really, as the opposing quarterback, I am just, complimentary of their team. I think they played really well, and I think they are building something. So I'll give VT the pick, which, by the way, that means only 1-3 vote team, UNC on Wednesday. Everyone else 2-1. Texas, Kentucky, and Virginia Tech favored by the podcast. So, Mike, I'll let you finish up here. Thursday, your thoughts. Oklahoma at Michigan State. We host the Sooners. That's going to be a fun game. LSU at Alabama in the quote-unquote Saban Bowl, I think was the term we used before the podcast started, even though it's two veteran ADs that as we talked about, again, I don't think you guys have played each other as an AD, where you and Wookie. Florida State at Colorado, and then to finish us off, West Virginia at Tennessee. Mike, I'll let you go with your thoughts, and then I'll go over to you, Ware.
Well, I mean, this is a slate of games, which is going to be really tough to pick because I think any of these games could go either way. LSU Bama going to be really interesting. Wookie coming off the close loss, definitely wants to get back in the win column, but Alabama coming off one of their best wins in history, most dominant performances. I think it's going to be a really interesting game. Oklahoma and Michigan State. I mean, that's one of those games where I could see either team winning, but I also could see if Michigan State struggles, Oklahoma maybe running away with it. So Michigan State's really going to have to be dialed in. That's a tough game to go up against. The 8:30 games, I mean, Florida State and Colorado. Colorado started off really slow in that game. And obviously, Kentucky's probably a step below Florida State overall. But Colorado's got a chance. And I know, he wants to build off of that win. But Florida State also start 1-1. They want to start 2-1. I think that's going to be a really good game. Honestly, I think it's tough to pick all of those games. I think all four of those games could be one-score games and must-see TV.
It's going to be a lot of fun. Ware, your thoughts, your picks?
So Oklahoma, Michigan State, I think that's going to be a really, really good game. And I'm going to say Michigan State squeaks by in a revenge game, but they're going to have to bring 110% to do it. I hate picking against Oklahoma because they're just so good, but I think Michigan State somehow squeaks by. West Virginia, Tennessee, I think Tennessee puts up a really good fight. I think West Virginia, Gunnar Rice have a really good performance again. Probably not a 73-point performance or nothing like that, but I'll give West Virginia, again, I think it's going to be a close game win. Florida State and Colorado, before this past week, I love Colorado and I love Skyballer, but I would have said Florida State easily. Colorado's performance this past week has really got this game hard to pick. I'm going to say Florida State, though. And then, of course, I am looking forward to a first-time matching up against Wookie as ADs. I got to roll with the Tide.
Yeah, no surprise on that one. I don't think we've ever had an AD on the show pick against his own team. That'd be kind of weird. But, I mean, you never know. All right, Ryan, your 4 picks.
This does feel the Michigan State, Oklahoma. This does feel like the Michigan State. Like last week was the down week, and now they come out and they blow out a good team, and then you're like, oh, okay, Michigan State's one of the best teams in the country, and then they lose next week, and you're like, okay, what is Michigan State? I feel like that's been the Michigan State since they've joined the CFSL. Is you never quite get a read on them, and as soon as you think you know what they are, they're going to do the opposite. However, with that said, Oklahoma's just playing red hot right now, and I can't pick against them. I think they're going to win this game. Although I do expect a battle, I'm really looking forward to that one. At the same time that the YouTube game, LSU Alabama, I do think this is going to be a really good game. I'm excited to see what Wookie comes up with game plan wise, but right now I just think Alabama's a touch ahead of them. First year with Wookie and LSU, I think they're going to get there to be a really, really good team in the next couple of seasons. But I think this year, this is going to be a really tough one for them to come into Alabama and try to win. So I'm going to take the Crimson Tide. Florida State and Colorado, after Florida State coming off that win, they looked great. Florida State's had some ups and downs so far. This one is a really interesting matchup, and I think it's really close. But when it's really close like that, I guess I'd have a tendency to look at the ADs, and nothing against Skyballer, who I think is a good game planner and a really good AD, but, Gritton's the all-time winningest AD for a reason. And for that reason, I'll lean towards Florida State. But I'm really expecting a great game out of that one. And then West Virginia, Tennessee, I think this one should be a really good game. The only difference maker for me right now in this one is it really feels like West Virginia found their settings last week. Like they played an unbelievably great game, and the talent they have at quarterback. I'm looking for Rice to be the difference maker, but I think this one's going to come down to the wire. This one could be a game. Whoever has the ball last is going to win.
It's going to be a lot of fun. I will go through as well.
Who did Ryan pick for that game?
West Virginia.
Oh. So, so far, tie for the first one. Bama, Florida State, and West Virginia each get 2 votes from our guests. Who do I choose? So here's the thing. I got to pick Michigan State. That's pretty obvious. I will say this. This is maybe our toughest opponent of all the entire season, including the Big Ten. Oklahoma, what they do best is they run the ball. And they can pass just as good as anybody, but one of the best rushing teams in this league. And Michigan State's weakness so far has been rushing defense. I think we're still like top 5 most yards allowed. I think this might be our toughest challenge. I'll root for my team all the way. I think we're going to win, but Oklahoma certainly comes into this game a monster. And Mateo Del Este, I think I've said this in articles and on this show multiple times, maybe my favorite player to watch in this league. Just such a versatile quarterback. I'm very excited for this game. And it's going to be the Thursday night game. It's going to be a lot of fun. So I will take my Spartans on that one. LSU at Alabama. I'm going to choose Bama here. I hate to do it, Auburn guy, but LSU comes in on the road. I think LSU is going to keep it a lot closer than people think. I don't think it's going to be like last week where Alabama just really ran Clemson out of the stadium, but it's going to be a lot of fun to watch to see how Wookie adjusts against. Alabama has a shot right now at 2-0. Obviously, still non-conference. There's a chance here that Alabama ends the season number 1 in the country. If they beat Auburn, if they beat Kentucky, and they go 8-0. So I think this is going to show us a lot, not only about Alabama, but mostly about LSU and how they compete against what probably I'm going to guess is a top 5 team this week. Mike, I know you haven't made the rankings yet, but I would be surprised if Alabama wasn't a top 5 team. And we'll go from there. Florida State at Colorado is my game of the week. This is the one that I actually will choose as the game that I think will be the possibly, just craziest game. Colorado already had a game like that last week. I think this game could easily, I don't know if it could be that out of control. I don't know how you get out of control as a 54-51 game with that fourth quarter last week, but Colorado, I think they keep that energy. And I will choose Colorado. I think Florida State's a very good team, but I think Colorado has the talent. And I think the game planning aspect of Colorado has been slept on a little bit. This could be a coming out party for that 80 over there. And one of my favorite players as well, their running back, Taylor James. West Virginia at Tennessee. I think West Virginia wins this one. Tennessee, I think, keeps it closer than West Virginia. Last week West Virginia played. But I will take the West Virginia on that one. I think their talent does play well. And this could be another high-scoring one as well, too. So that is it for the picks. USC gets 2-1 over Auburn. Oregon gets 3-0 over their opponent, Notre Dame. Auburn 3-0 over A&M. Michigan 3-0 over Clemson on Wednesday. Texas 2-1 over Penn State. Kentucky 2-1 over Ohio State. UNC 3-0 over Georgia. Virginia Tech 2-1 votes over Florida. Thursday, Michigan State 2-1 over Oklahoma. Alabama gets a 3-0 score over LSU. Florida State gets a 2-1 win over Colorado. And West Virginia gets 3 votes against Tennessee. That is it for the picks. Could be a lot of fun. Just really some great games to watch. I really am interested. Like I said, Florida State, Colorado jumped out to me. We talked about Florida, Virginia Tech as well, Ohio State, Kentucky as well. Just gonna be a lot of fun. So that's all I have on that, and we are reaching the end of the show here. So I got one more thing before we go. We had the question form. I threw it in league chat before we started. We have a few questions here. I'm going to ask Mike this question, just for Mike. Even though, for the record, when I put it in league chat, they thought Tank was on the show. So no one asking these questions has any idea you're on the show. So this is from Trips, Oregon 80. Has the season so far planned out as expected, or do you think we're in for some real parity? My question on top of that is this not parity already for you, Mike?
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, you look at it, as we talked about before, A&M could be 0-3, or USC, A&M, and Auburn could all be 1-2. I mean, that's as good a parity as you can get. On the flip side, you got a team like Oregon could be 3-0. So yeah, I think. It seems like we've talked about it every season. This new era that we've moved into, every season we say it's the most parity we've ever seen, and I think it's even better this season. I know, USC and Auburn probably hate that, and A&M really coming off of last season, with an opportunity to go in 3, probably hate it. But then you got to think that, Michigan, Oregon, some of these other teams that have an opportunity to kind of rebuild and really come out of the gates hot and reverse what happened last season, I think is great. So, that's the thing. Like I said earlier, the teams that can consistently win 5 or 6 games every year are outpacing everybody. But even the teams that struggle one year got a chance to really rebound the next season and see if they can build off of it and create some hype around the program. But yeah, I think parity is as good as it's ever been. I don't think we're going to see an 8-0 team this season. I think having 2 last season was an aberration. I think Auburn going 8-0 the last 2 seasons is an aberration. I think USC went in 2 in a row is an aberration. Not that those guys weren't awesome at what they did, but it's just so unlikely in the overall grand scheme. I think we could see a completely different Final Four this season than we had last season. Like we talked about, we could see Ohio State, Michigan really be in a game that decides something, which it doesn't seem like we've had for a while and very often in that series. Auburn and Alabama could be another Week 8 game that is really meaningful, which doesn't seem like we've seen that for a while. Even though Alabama's always good, it always the last couple of seasons Auburn's like, oh well, they're clearly better this season. I don't know if we're going to see that. So yeah, I think we're going to see a lot more fireworks. I think we're going to see a lot of really close games. I'm going to see some upsets, and I think we're going to see some teams that were really good last season go 4-4, and I think we're going to see some teams that were maybe 0-8, 1-7 last season go 4-4 or 5-3. So I think, I think the parity's again as good as it's ever been, and I think everybody's got a shot, and it's gonna be fun to see how it all plays out.
All righty. Well, thank you, Mike. So funny enough, I'm gonna make fun of Ware here again. Your boy did not submit a question, even though you said all throughout before the podcast started he was going to. But no question from Britt.
It's probably better for the show that he did it.
Yeah, that's fair. He was talking before the show about his questions. Maybe we don't want his questions. I didn't get too many questions on this. I posted the form late. We will probably answer some of them next week. We're also already, this is maybe going to be the longest show we've actually had. So I will finish it up here. Mike, I know you're new. I'll let you go first on this. We give each person 30 seconds to talk about their team and all that. I know you're the commissioner, so I don't know how much you want to boast about North Carolina, but I'll let you talk about your team 30 seconds, and then I'll go to Ware and Ryan as well before we finish.
Can't do anything in 30 seconds. I'm not gonna talk about my team. I mean, we're great. I let Gunn and UF and the team, talk about them. One thing I will take my time to point out is that coming up in week 4, the second to last game of week 4 is going to be our 2000th game in CFSL history. So I still got to figure out how I'm going to schedule that, because unfortunately it's not the last game or the first game, so it makes it hard. But the second to last game of week number 4 is going to be our 2000th game in CFSL history.
That's awesome. I mean, when I know we're doing the 30-second cutouts here before we end, but man, I must have joined at 500 games in season 7, maybe closer to 1,000. When was
season 7? I don't know. I'm trying to remember. I mean, it probably would have been season 6 or 7 that we hit 500.
What a moment for you in this league. And I'm sure next week we're going to talk a lot about that on the show. So congratulations to you, Mike.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It's crazy. I mean, it's crazy to think about that, 2,000 games. I mean, and it seems like just yesterday we were doing the 500th game podcast where I think we had 8 people on that were all here since season 1. And so I got to try to figure that out. We're going to do the podcast on Monday, obviously, in week 4. But I'm thinking about doing another one as a pre-show on Thursday before the 2000th game, and try to get some older guys that have been around, like Tom and Wookie and maybe Clutch or Allie or Matt Pack. Try to get some old timers that have been around for a long time, really celebrate the history of the CFSL going into that game.
Yeah, should be a good one, and we'll be here to talk about it. All right. Ware, I'll let you get your 30 seconds first. Go right ahead.
Super proud of the team and how we did. Got a freshman, Denver Anthony, who is in a very crowded wide receiver room with a guy of Troy Tree and Kyle Claxton's likings, and he has got the second most receiving touchdowns in the league. So happy to see a freshman coming in and doing something big. But overall, just the coaching staff coming together and really helping dial things in. Just overall, I think it's the strongest Alabama team and coaching staff that I've had in a really long time, if not the greatest. So just glad to be part of it and excited about our future.
All righty. And Ryan, one more segment for you.
Yeah, really proud of the coaches and the team, the way we bounced back after the big loss week 1 to have a big win week 2. And I know we're going to keep it rolling into week 3 and then into conference play. So very proud of the Longhorns right now and excited for the rest of the season.
All righty. Well, thank you guys for jumping on. I know Ware and Ryan, you guys are frequent guests on the show. Mike, finally get you on the show. Glad to have you. You and the bald head, if I might say so myself.
Hey, how about you try to grow a beard before you start talking about my hair?
Remember when I worked for you and I had a beard and how bad it was? There's a reason I don't have a beard.
Then maybe you should be talking about people's hair. Have you combed yours in the last week, by the way?
No, at all. I'm a Florida man. We don't.
I told you not to go down this path, Cole.
Dows it in alcohol.
You try to do it, and you're going to lose every time.
We got Gasparilla next week here in Tampa. It's gonna be a lot of fun.
You should probably shave your head for that.
That would be a scary sight. Look,
let's be honest. Cole doesn't. I don't know if Cole looks
shaved head.
Yeah,
it's not him.
I think that mop that he's got up there probably looks better than a shaved head.
You got a sick mullet though. If you just cut the sides.
I've been thinking
off.
about letting it, come down as a ball, but I
Do a little
don't
field
know.
on.
Oh my gosh.
I can
Look,
see
I don't
Cole
live in
with the
Alabama
mullet.
anymore. I had one in college when I was at Auburn. It wasn't really a true I had
That's
the
not a
sideburns.
shock at all.
Oh yeah,
Caltech and a mullet. I mean, yeah.
That
yeah.
Alabama waterfall back there.
Well, not everybody can be their mom's boyfriend.
Ay. All right. Well, this went off the rails as expected. But that's my fault. Thank you
Per
again.
the usual.
Thank you again, Ware, for jumping on. Ryan Ware, David Ware,
Ryan
Alabama
Ware
80, Ryan
and
Ware.
David Moreland. Those the next two players in the CFSL.
You guys,
I mean,
There
I'm
you go.
down. Are you
Yeah.
down? I'm down.
Yeah, I was thinking. I don't know what I'm gonna name the next one. So
yeah, me
There we
either.
go.
David
We settled
Moreland
it
there.
on the show.
David Moreland, Ryan Ware. All right. I'd like to thank David Moreland, the AD of Texas, and Ryan Ware, the AD of Alabama. I'd also like to thank Mike Peters, commissioner and El Presidente of the league. We're going to get all of you guys back on as well. That's going to be it for the show. Again, I'm Cole Mantell. We will be back next week for real this time, not having stupid internet issues like last week. And, hopefully it will be a good one. Have a good week, guys, and look forward to this week of CFSL action. We'll see you then. Bye-bye.